Savage. I'm not an ordinary talk show host. I'm not a guy who was a disc jockey who got lucky. Let's make this a vigorous discussion. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. You've got to do the right thing for humanity. Let's re-educate America. There is no separation of church and state in the Constitution. What is socialized medicine? It's a disaster. Let's show the Hollywood idiots that we have a brain. Red, diaper, doper babies. They're running the universities, they're running the journalism departments, and they're running the courts. How could this be happening to sane, normal, decent, patriotic Americans? I have been talking about borders, language, and culture ever since I began in the media. How can the listeners to the Savage Nation stop them from tearing our culture to pieces? Savage. Be here or be nowhere.
Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, and psychological nudity. Viewer discretion is advised.
You're watching MSNBC. Now, best-selling author and one of America's most popular radio personalities, Michael Savage, on the Savage Nation.
Hello, infidels, and welcome to another episode of the Savage Nation, where each week I defend America's borders, language, and culture from those who would send this great nation down the road to ruin. Now, as always, you're going to experience extreme psychological nudity on this show. What does that mean? It means I strip away the veneer of deceit to bring you the naked reality of the liberal body politic. It isn't always pretty. Think Ed Asner's behind, but it's the savage truth. Now, here's what got me crazy this week. One, you probably heard about the Muslim woman in Florida who refused to remove her veil for a driver's license photo because she claims her religious beliefs forbid it. Well, guess what? American law forbids having your face covered on your license, okay? So why should this be an issue? Why? Because of a legal loophole that some slimy ACLU lawyers use called the cultural defense. You're not going to believe the kinds of things people are getting away with in American courts using this ploy. I'm going to have a great guest to talk about this right here in the Savage Nation. Now, there's a lot to talk about in the Savage Times this week. It's business as usual for the lefty politicians, including our old friend, Mr. Hillary Clinton, who apparently wants to be president once again. I guess all this time, he's going to do it alone with his wife. And let me tell you something else. I'll tell you what Bill Clinton said today, because you're not going to believe it. Something about bring back the amendment, get rid of the amendment. All right, and in the wake of the scandal at the Old York Times, newspapers everywhere are acting out their own versions of the Blair witch hunt in a desperate attempt to prove that their reporters are not all biased and sloppy hacks. Well, maybe not all of them. I'll tell you what the editor of the LA Times wrote about his own paper. Also, remember this name, Jawad Amir. You've heard of Anne Frank, who hid from the Nazis in the attic, right? I think it's time we started talking about Jawad Amir in the same way. You're going to be amazed by the sacrifices he made to avoid Saddam Hussein's tyranny. But you don't hear about that from the liberals, do you? In Saddam's sick world, Jawad Amir was considered an infidel. You know, I call my viewers infidels, but I mean it as a badge of honor. You're all infidels. You know why? Because you're not faithful to the liberal doctrines that the left keeps trying to brainwash you with. But there are right now in this country so-called religious leaders preaching a doctrine that advocates violence against anyone who they see as infidels, just like Saddam did. To them, an infidel is anyone who doesn't follow their twisted, radical Islamic logic. And they're here, and they're now. The problem is these people are claiming that their insane visions are protected speech under the First Amendment. It isn't free speech. It's inciting terrorism and murder, and it has to stop. I will have as my guest a terrorism expert who will share his experiences with real hate speech in America. Real hate speech in America. And you'll be as outraged as I am when you hear what he has to say. Topic 4, while we're on the subject of real hate and death speech, it seems that every time you point the camera at the liberal left, they shout about the evil conservative agenda on the right. Well, guess what? The left has an agenda too, obviously. Sure, you knew that. But you might not know how subtle and devious it really is. Later, I'm going to expose some of the lies that the Marxist left is trying to sneak past you. Remember, when it comes to exposing liberal idiocy, Michael Savage is here for you. Finally tonight, there's some hope for the future. It appears that the leftist stranglehold on college campuses across the nation is at last coming to an end, thanks to the efforts of conservative students who are saying no more to the liberal brainwashing that has passed for education for way too long. And these aren't your daddy's young Republicans, believe me. Conservative today on campus is becoming cool, believe it or not. I'll have a couple of guests who are at the cutting edge of this strong conservative youth movement. And of course, what would the Savage Nation be like without the return of Savage's Hollywood idiot? This week's winner has always been a bit misguided, but this week, wow, she's gone off the deep end for sure. Yeah, it's a she. I gave you a hint, okay? I want to talk about the ratings on television for just a minute. It's very important that I do. I'm a brand new show. I get thousands of emails from people saying, Mike, I subscribed to cable for the first time. I never heard of MSNBC, but I've signed up for you. Now, if you've signed up for MSNBC just because of this show, why aren't you being recorded by the Nielsen rating system? How come they don't have an equal voice, meaning you, in deciding the ratings? You're all over the country, from Boston to San Diego. I still don't know what the qualifications are, frankly, for getting a ratings box attached to your TV set. Is it that you fit a demographic or that you voted Democratic? I really don't know. But we'll talk about that. Also, right now, I'm going to take your calls at 1-888-MSNBC-USA. And remember this, if you get on the air with me, you'll be talking to more people at one time than you'll meet for the rest of your life. Hey, that's an amazing editorial, right? You don't have to be like Sean Penn. You don't have to spend $135,000 to write something like from toilet paper that you wrote in the bathroom and in a car, moving pieces put together. The guy's got to take English Literature 101 from the thing he wrote yesterday. You don't have to do it. This is the Savage Nation. You're going to be here or be nowhere. We got callers already? Do I have time to take a call yet? No, I got to do a tease now of the cultural defense segment that's coming up. But the callers are good. We got Jake, we got Bob, we got Mike, we got Don, we got you, we got me. And I'll tell you what we have today. I have tremendous confidence that this is going to be one of my best shows. Do you know why? I'll tell you why later. It's because God is with me in the room today. You don't have to believe it. You really don't have to believe it. The important thing is that I do. All right? Be here or be nowhere. I'm Michael Savage.
Savage. Up next, the veiled truth and the legal loopholes with special guest Lisa Bloom. Sunday on MSN.
You don't speak Arabic, do you?
I'm learning it.
You're learning, but you don't speak it.
No.
And you didn't speak it when you read the Quran in English translation to reach your opinion about whether veiling is required.
No.
You are aware, however, that translations are different. Not all the passages in the Quran from one translation to another are the same, are they?
That's correct.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable what goes on in a free country. Welcome back to the Savage Nation. You just heard this lady, a convert to Islam, admitting in court that the Quran has many interpretations. Now, why is that important? I'll tell you. Look, first, take a look at this photo in the monitor behind me. A driver's license photo, as you can see. It's a perfectly nice picture of Sultana Freeman wearing a veil over her face. The problem is that it's on her Florida driver's license, and it's pretty obvious why there are photos on driver's licenses, so that law enforcement officials, cops, can see your face and be sure it's really you driving the car. Think the Beltway snipers. For all I know, this could be Osama bin Laden in that photo, okay? So why didn't this woman uncover her face for the photo? Why? Because her interpretation of her religion, Islam, forbids her to remove the veil. Let me pause here for a moment to remind you about the three most important words in the Savage Nation. One is borders, two is language, and three, which applies in this case, is culture. I've been trying to tell you, saving America from the liberal assault on our borders, language, and culture. What does the word culture mean? When I talk about culture is, if you live in America, you should embrace American culture and abide by American laws. This means that when American law says take off your veil for a driver's license photo, you do it. Even more so if, like this woman, Sultana Freeman, you are an American who converted to Islam, okay? That's a very big differential here. Of course, who's defending her? The usual suspects. The American Communist Liberties Union is defending her in court, which is not surprising. But it's interesting that in this particular case, they're siding with religion. Think about it. The ACLU are the same people who don't want the words "In God We Trust" displayed in public places because that might offend non-religious folks. They're the same people who are trying to break the crosses off war memorials everywhere in the country. And yet here, they seem to have no problem defending a religion, because the religion is not Christianity. It's Islam, and it's Islam over Florida law. Don't you love it? In this case, religion trumps the state. In every other case, it's the state trumps religion. Now, the bigger issue here is something called the cultural defense, which is a strategy that only defense lawyers try to use. The cultural defense goes something like this. Your Honor, I know that my client killed his wife here in America, but she cheated on him. And back home in the village in China where he was born, it's okay to kill your wife if she cheats on you. My client was just acting in accordance with his culture. You think I made that up, right? You think I'm just being sarcastic? No. That was an actual case tried in a New York City court. And I'm disgusted to tell you that the sixth strategy worked. The man who killed his wife ended up with only 5 years probation because the moronic judge bought this ludicrous cultural defense argument. Now, the judge in Florida is expected to rule on the driver's license photo by next week. Joining me now to discuss this case and the bigger issue of phony cultural defense attorneys, so-called, is Court TV anchor Lisa Bloom. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the Savage Nation.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming out on a miserable Saturday.
Thanks.
Now, Lisa, isn't this driver's license case a matter of national security, and isn't that more important than one woman's religious beliefs?
You know, Michael, I'm surprised at you. As a conservative, I think you'd be in favor of freedom of religion, even minority religions, religions that you might not be a part of, and at least accepting the fact that at the beginning of the case, we're going to take other religions seriously and look at what the issues are. In this case, Latana Freeman is a devout Muslim. She's an adult. She chooses Islam. She wants to wear the veil. Doesn't mean she wins the case, but at least we have to look at her religion seriously and not, you know, poo-poo it.
Why not? She's not using this religion for religious sake. She's using it to upset the apple cart of America. She has no right taking a driver's license photo in a mask any more than a member of the Ku Klux Klan does, coming out in a white cap and a white veil and saying, that's my interpretation of Christianity. Do we want to suddenly have masked bandits wearing with driver's license photos? That wouldn't work, would it, Lisa?
Well, what about a religious Jew who wants to wear a yarmulke or has long facial hair in the military?
Does a yarmulke cover his face?
What about a priest who wants to wear a certain type of gown? Religious people wear different types of clothing than you and I might wear, Michael.
You're way off the map here. A yarmulke doesn't cover a face. We don't use hair for an identity. We use eyes, nose, facial features. If you're going to cover those features except for the eyes, how are you going to identify a driver on the road?
Look, Michael, I'm not saying I disagree with you when we get to the end of the case, because I think that the state of Florida did prove at trial that she does need to remove the veil.
So why are we arguing?
But I would not look down on someone because they're a different religion, because they dress differently than me.
Oh, but that's not the issue. You know it's not their religion, Lisa. You don't have to. Lisa, please don't lecture me about cultural sensitivity, because that's not the issue. The issue is someone trying to get over on us using their religion just to have some fun. That's why the ACLU took the case.
That's what she's doing? How do you know how seriously she takes her religion?
The issue is, Lisa, a mask over a face. You can't agree with that, can you?
It's not about whether I agree or disagree. I'm not a Muslim. If I were a Muslim, I might worship the way she does.
Let me ask you, Lisa, do you have a law degree?
Of course.
So you're arguing that it's okay to wear a mask on a driver's license photo?
No, I'm saying that ultimately I think the state of Florida is going to win this case, and I think they probably should win the case.
All right, well, thanks for being with me. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Lisa. Goodbye. Because we respect her rights.
Bye, Lisa. Thanks for being with me. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you can see where lawyers' minds are. They're irrational. When lawyers put their convoluted reasoning ahead of common sense, what we wind up with is the United States of America today. That was the biggest problem we have ever seen in this country. It's getting crazier by the day. Latana Freeman says that since her license has been revoked, that's the woman, she can't even drive to the store to buy diapers for her son. Now, speaking of children, Sultana, why not tell the United States about your arrest years ago when you invoked the same phony religious defense to prevent child protective authorities from taking the clothing off your children to check your foster kids for bruises? Back then you said your religion did not permit them to uncover the kids. Pretty convenient religion, I would say. Ted, line 3 on the Savage Nation. What's on your mind? Be here or be nowhere?
Yes, yes, I believe that the veil issue has no issue. She's not really a threat, so why should she have to take her mask off? If she's not a threat to people...
How do you know she's not a threat?
Well, actually, I don't know she's not a threat, but you're...
Ted, hold on. As of now, she's not a threat. But let's be rational.
Sure.
You're driving down a road. You get into an auto accident with somebody. You want them to have a veil on so you don't know who they are?
Well, I understand your point, but the point is that
but there is no bigger point.
The point is that all Muslims are a threat, though, is what you're saying.
No, that's what you just said. Don't put words in my mouth. You just said all Muslims are a threat. I said wearing a veil for a state driver's license is absolutely insane. You can't identify the person.
Right.
That's what we agree, right?
Exactly.
All right, thanks for calling.
Thank you.
That's all. Try to put words in my mouth. Bob, line 2, you're on the Savage Nation. What's on your mind?
Hi, Savage. Don't cut me off, but I think you're bordering on racism on this issue.
Oh, I'm so sorry, sir.
What?
Oh, may I apologize to you? Am I a racist?
Wait a second.
Am I also an evil man because I brought up common sense? You're a moron. It's idiots like you that make this country go up in flames. Moron.
Wait a second.
You're the racist.
Let me talk.
You know why you're a racist? Because you use the word racist too quickly. Get out of here. Go gargle with Rogaine. Go gargle with Rogaine. Grow a beard on your tongue. Okay? Then enough. Listen to that stupidity. Let's go to a break. I don't want to listen to these people. That guy ought to go get a law degree. That's what he's fit for. We'll be right back, taking your calls right here on the Savage Nation. Okay, be here. Look what listens to the show on a Saturday afternoon. Look what I'm dredging up here. My God. Is there nobody with a brain out there?
Savage. You won't want to miss Michael Savage's News of the Week, coming up next.
Well, welcome back to the Savage Nation. Now, we're going to check out the headlines of the week in a moment here on the Savage Nation. But first, I want to go to a caller who might be sane. Let's try for a sane one. Line 4, Mike, welcome to the Savage Nation.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Mike.
Yeah.
This is Mike from Akron, Ohio.
Thank you.
I'm just saying, okay, all right, with her license, all right, driver's license has been revoked, right?
Yeah.
So what is that replaced with? An identification card.
What it's replaced with is a court case.
Yeah.
But wait, Mike, let's not go through the whole thing. Do you agree with me that if you're in America, you take a driver's license picture without a mask on, yes or no?
Yes. No mask.
No mask, thank you. We don't need the Zorro pictures. And let me tell you why. Let's just go back to it for a minute. If you agree with this and you fall for this religious BS as an excuse to get away with it, that means someone who is into sadomasochism, let's say in San Francisco, and wears leather masks, they could say, it's a religion of lasciviousness. That's my religion. We believe in wearing leather masks, particularly when we go before governmental agencies, and we insist on being photographed in a leather mask. How do you let a country fall down the road? It doesn't happen overnight. It starts with step by step, which is why that dirtbag in the ACLU ought to have not his driver's license revoked. They ought to pull his law license away from him. That's what they ought to do to these bums. I'm sick of the ACLU, okay? They're public enemy number 1. They're out to destroy you. Let's go to the news of the week. Let's start with President Bush. I've actually got a couple of bones to pick with him this week. First of all, I'm an independent. I'm not a registered Republican. And he signed that big AIDS bill, which is way too much money going out of this country. Now, who do you think's paying for it? You, idiot. There's no guarantees that that $15 billion is going to make a bit of a difference anyway. Then he goes and gives an interview on French television. Did you see that one this week? As an American, and as an American radio and television interviewer, I am personally shocked. And I think the president's action in going on French television, forget about my show. He could have gone on one of the big network shows, which he won't do. Why would he go to France? I would love to have him on my show for an interview. But he refuses to talk to me, but he goes to the French, of all people. Of all people, the French! Now, speaking of presidents, it seems that our previous pres, that's Clinton, is trying to his hand at stand-up comedy. Will you listen to this one? I think we got Clinton coming up on the Savage Nation. Let's play it again, Sam.
I think since people are living much longer, it wouldn't affect me, but for future generations, the 22nd Amendment should probably be modified to say 2 consecutive terms instead of 2 terms for a lifetime.
See, I did not have sex with that woman. I mean 2 consecutive terms, not 2 terms. What was he just saying? 16 years? Papa Doc Clinton? Is that what you want here? Okay. Second Amendment limits presidents to 2 terms in office. Okay, that's it. Bingo. We don't need 2 consecutive terms. That's 16 years. Okay, we don't need 16 years. I don't care. 16 years of any one president is enough for me, right? How about 8 years? Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's a big story that I want to get to. And that's because if we listen to Clinton, I'm sure that you can understand that there are some Italians who would still like to bring Mussolini back. But we don't believe in them, do you? The media meltdown continues. We're going to talk about that later on in the Savage Nation. But I want to get, folks, before we skip this section, I want to get right to the man in the wall. This is the big one, because this is a gigantic story. You've heard of Anne Frank, and I don't want to skip this one. Anne Frank was a Jewish girl who had to hide from the Nazis in a wall. Remember that? In an attic, rather. Tragic story. She was eventually taken to a death camp and killed by the evil Nazis. Well, how come the human rights organizations refuse to tell you about this Iraqi man who hid inside a wall? This Iraqi man, who I'm calling the Iraqi Anne Frank, out of respect for Anne Frank. His name is Jawad Amir from the village of Jabba in Iraq. He is 49 years old. To escape the death sentence that Saddam Hussein placed on his head, this poor man, Amir, hid inside a wall in his family home for 21 years. 21 years in a dark crawl space with only a tiny peephole to view the outside world. Why don't you Hollywood morons talk about this man? We've all heard the story of Anne Frank, and I think it's time we moved into the everyday so that every school child in this country should be taught the tale of this man, Jawad Amir. His story, by the way, has a happier ending than Anne Frank's did. And he deserves to be made into a positive example of what we're fighting for. So the next time some lefty from Amnesty International starts whining about human rights abuses, remind them of the abuse of thousands of Iraqis who met a terrifying end. We're going to break. I'll be back. Be here, be nowhere. I'm Michael Savage. All right. Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Welcome back. Well, I wear sunglasses during the break. The lights are killing me. Now, the First Amendment gives us the freedom to say what we want. That's great. I live on it, right? But what if that free speech goes as far as someone getting up and preaching to kill someone? Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote a long time ago that freedom of speech does not give a person the right to yell, "Fire!" in a crowded movie theater or any other theater. So what should happen when someone stands up in a mosque and urges his followers to murder the followers of other religions, okay? And then the infidels who don't accept his extreme views. This is not a hypothetical question anymore. You know, wake up from your slumber. It is happening right now. In mosques in America, and even from schools, come voices urging violence and terror against Americans and other religious and ethnic minorities. The worst part is, these fringe lunatics are cloaking themselves in the First Amendment to protect themselves. And idiotic liberals, like the guest I had on, are calling anyone who stands up to them a racist. We all know what the results are when people take action on those words to kill. How many suicide bombers have we seen only in the past 6 weeks? Do you really need to see another 9/11 attack on American soil to prove my point? Should hate and death to the infidel speech be protected speech? Now, let me make a point right now. We understand that the majority of Muslims in America want the very same life that we want for themselves and their family. I am concerned about the fringe who are inside those communities. And joining me right now is internationally recognized terrorism expert Steve Emerson. Steve, welcome to the Savage Nation. Tell me about some of the things being said in mosques in this country, because you've been around a long time.
Well, interestingly enough, there are unfortunately various mosques and religious institutions here under the Islamic umbrella, and we're talking about a minority, but still a fair number that have allowed their institutions to become home where Islamic religious leaders have preached jihad, have talked about killing the infidel. And I can give you a couple of examples that I think is very telling, in large part because the American public, the media, the regular society doesn't see this because it's spoken in an institution that's hidden away from scrutiny.
Let me ask you something, Steve. This is very important. You saw my previous guest saying that I'm like anti-religious. This is all nonsense. What's the sensitivity to people who've already shown all over the world that they're intolerant of everybody else? What are we walking on eggshells for? Shouldn't the shoe be on the other foot?
Well,
is this going on here, Steve, or are you talking about in another country, in France or Germany? Are we talking about radical religious leaders here, Steve?
Absolutely. The problem is that hiding under the victim card, under the human rights card, under the ethnicity card, militant Islamic groups and leaders have been able to confuse the public and public leaders by claiming that they are really just victims, when in fact what goes on behind closed doors is much more indicative of what we see in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and other militant Islamic countries. And the problem really is that they're willing to play that card. And it basically... But
they get away with it, Steve. They're playing the card because they can get away with it. Look at the people like that woman from the court TV already, overly sensitive because I'm bringing this up, trying to tell me to be sensitive to Islam. What does that have to do with anything? We're talking about a state driver's license. Nothing to do with Islam. It had to do with someone trying a sham on us. What role do religious leaders play in the Islamic hierarchy, by the radical ones? Is it really prevalent, or is it minimalist?
Well, I haven't taken a survey, but I can tell you, based on the research that I've been doing and my organization's been doing for about 8 years, we have seen just a vast majority of those clerics that have gone public in Saudi Arabia, in United Arab Emirates, in Kuwait, in Qatar, calling for jihad, justifying suicide bombings, although sometimes after 9/11 you would hear clerics say, we condemn 9/11, but they would condemn it only because it was counterproductive. When you ask them, is Al-Qaeda a terrorist group, they say, we don't know that Al-Qaeda was responsible.
Steve, what about here? Do we have the problem here in American mosques?
Without doubt. There's absolutely no. We have story after story, various mosques that we've been tracking, showing calls for jihad, attacks on the United States itself.
In this country, Steve?
In Virginia, and in Brooklyn, in New Jersey, in California. And the fact is, unless you get it on video or audio tape, these groups will deny it. But fortunately, we have some of the information.
Here's what I need to know. I know the FBI, under John Ashcroft, thank God, no longer intimidated by the radical left psychos in the ACLU, have in fact been looking into such institutions. But I have a real problem with this, and the problem is this. Remember, there was a sect of Christianity that called for the death of Jews, for example? Well, rightly so, the FBI penetrated them and broke them up. Most of them are in jail, right? You remember there was an extremist Christian group that misinterpreted Christianity to say that you should kill the infidels, in essence? They were gone after tooth and claw and broken up. And so why are we allowing this in our country? Why is the FBI not going in and saying this is not a valid religious sermon? You're calling for the death of people. Why are they allowed to get away with it?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think you raised some good points, but with the Christian identity movement, I think that was the movement you're referring to. Right. There was violence that was carried out. So when you yell fire in a crowded theater, what they're prohibiting is the act of violence that ensues. It's like yelling, kill the umpire. If nobody kills the umpire, you're free to say it, but if somebody kills the umpire by the 9th inning, then you can be held accountable. Now, in this case, the issue is radical Islamic clerics and institutions that essentially get away with murder. Now, what I'm saying here is, I'm not saying criminalize extremist rhetoric all the time. In fact, if anything, I err on the side of, say, it's free speech. It's not illegal, nor should it be, to say death to America. But, on the other hand, it should not be prohibited from the FBI to use that as part of a matrix to investigate a group. If they hear a radical group say death to America, they have an indication that that group might do something bad.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. In other words, do we have to wait for 30 body bags to say, aha, well, they really meant it? I mean, this is the problem with the radical left. They're saying, well, they're just saying it, they don't really mean it. Well, you know what? I don't want them to experiment with my life or your life, Steve. And I'm really sick of the law in this country being handcuffed by the radical leftist lawyers. Can you please tell me the story of Dr. Al-Moody? How did he get invited to the White House, and who is he, with what he said about Hamas and Hezbollah? That's a big case, isn't it?
Well, it's an interesting and telling case. He was the head of the American Muslim Council. He had been invited repeatedly, pictured with the President and Vice President Gore and Clinton from '96 through the year 2000, and at a rally in October of 2000, he was recorded as saying that he openly supported Hamas and Hezbollah. Now, the fact is, when he was asked by a reporter a week later, he denied that he said it, and then the reporter said, but you said it on a tape in English. Now, he had been invited to the White House numerous times, and suddenly, after this tape came out, he was disinvited, but now he's resurrecting himself and getting invited back to major...
You mean he didn't say that it was a Zionist trick, that he said it in English, that it wasn't him, that the Zionists put it into the tape?
He couldn't deny it, although I have had situations where I've collected tapes from the Islamic Association for Palestine, a Hamas front, where they've actually given out Hamas training tapes in the United States, and then when asked about it by a reporter, they claimed that somehow I fabricated the tape, stitching it together digitally, which of course was impossible. So,
Stephen, are they actually trying to create a climate for suicide bombers, native-born American suicide bombers? Is that what they're working on?
I can't say that. I can say that when you basically sanctify jihad or holy war, you can't compartmentalize it. If you're saying you support suicide bombings against Israelis or against the Russians, then how do you stop them from doing it against Americans? And in fact, there was a wonderful editorial in Arab News 2 weeks ago out of Riyadh where they said if this country allows the sanctification of suicide bombings against Jews and against Russians, then we're going to allow it against Saudis.
Stephen, you're the greatest. I've had you on the radio show years ago, and I'll tell you, I don't know how you have the guts to do what you do, but I admire you, and you've been at it a long time.
Thank you.
And this terrible problem we have of people hiding behind civil rights and religious guises to plot the destruction of America, to kill the Jewish people, to kill the Christian people, and to permit the radical leftist lawyers to let them do it is the real shame here. The enemy within, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is far more dangerous than Al-Qaeda, and they're the ones you better focus on, the ones who always front for them, okay? You're listening to The Savage Nation. When we come back, we're going to have some good callers, some emails, another great segment. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it very much. We'll be right back here on The Savage Nation. Be here. We'll be nowhere.
Savage. Up next, Michael Savage reveals some of the false stereotypes the left tries to sneak past you.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Plus, call in with your own best lie from left. 1-888-MSNBC-USA.
All right, welcome back to the Savage Nation. We're going to go to liberal lies in a minute, but I want to take line 6. Line 6, welcome here. What's your name? Maureen. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Good afternoon.
Hi.
I've got to tell you, this girl, she was born an American before she decided to become a Muslim. I'll bet you she was just as excited at 16 as you and I were when we went and got our first photograph for our license. So, by gosh darn it, she ought to just, go ahead and quit hiding behind all her excuses and get it taken care of.
You're right, but you know, there's a bigger issue that America shouldn't forget. Let me just go back to the driver's license thing. I was shocked to find out this woman with the driver's license with the mask, a couple of years ago, she was arrested. I think it was in Illinois. I'm not exactly sure the state. Her foster children were allegedly abused. When Child Protective Services went in there to look at the children, her lawyer said, oh, you can't take the clothing off because it would violate their religion. And they couldn't even see the bruises. And she was arrested for it anyway. So don't assume that everyone who says that they're religious is religious. How many people suddenly discover religion in prison in order to get an early parole, okay? So let's be clear. Now let's go to the liberal left. The liberal left loves to accuse the right of pushing a conservative agenda on an unsuspecting American public, right? Well, memo to the left, we're not all that unsuspecting. It apparently hasn't occurred to you liberals that maybe we actually support the conservative agenda because A, it appears to be working pretty well, and B, we love America and we haven't heard anything remotely resembling a constructive alternative from the other side. Finger-pointing and whining does not count, Tom Daschle. But underneath that oh-so-caring and compassionate exterior of the left is trying to play subliminal mind games with you. But fear not, I, Michael Savage, your ever-vigilant voice of reason, am now going to expose these liberal lies and rebut them with the savage truth. For example, liberals would like you to believe that people who vote Republican are all rich, right? Well, take a look at this map from the last presidential election. See that? I guess everyone in all those red states must be a multimillionaire. Everybody living in a red state watching this show must be a millionaire, right? Because you're all Republicans. How about this one, another lie of the left? Scientists do not believe in God. Scientists do not believe in God. Well, for one, I have a Ph.D. in science. I'm a scientist, and I believe in God. Right here is my Bible, and it's not for show. You see all the Post-its? Those are for the wee small hours of the night. And here's another book. It's another good book. It's called The Savage Nation. If these liberal idiots had read my book, which hundreds of thousands of Americans have done, it would have made them smart enough to stop making moronic pronouncements such as scientists do not believe in God. By the way, Albert Einstein, for those of you who know who he is, E equals MC squared, Albert Einstein believed in God. He wrote, and I didn't know that in the early stages, I thought he was an atheist. Einstein said that at the end of his life, when he tried to understand what was beyond the universe, no matter how far his mind went, he realized there had to be God. How do you like that one? Now here's another one of the leftist lies. Affirmative action students are just as qualified as other students. Well, let's look at the statistics. Really? A study done recently at the University of California, my alma mater, showed that only 7.2% of minority students admitted under special criteria, which is code for affirmative action. 7.2%, only 7.2%, graduated in 4 years. 7.2% of the special people graduated in 4 years, compared with 34.1% of all other students who were not admitted by affirmative action. And for those who try to claim that admissions tests like the SAT are culturally biased, you know what? It's a test of English and math. Learn the fundamentals of those, and you'll do fine with the rest of the culture. Let's stop with the garbage. Now, this one is really funny. According to the left, homeless people, yeah, I call them bums, all want to work. Yeah, right. Well, you pick up your local newspaper, and you look in the back, and you look at the help wanted section. Even in a down economy, there's jobs every day, menial jobs. And there's not a job that they're looking for. You know, if you can read the wanted ads, you bums out there who are with the cups, you could get a job. How about this? Liberals want you to believe that people who opposed the war in Iraq opposed it because they cared about the Iraqi people and they were concerned about it. Really? Let's look at the video here of the mass graves. Let's look at this picture of the mass graves. How do you feel about thousands of Iraqi bones and skulls buried in the sand, Mr. and Mrs. Liberal America? Were you caring about the Iraqi people while this genocide was going on? Would you rather that they were still dying like this or hiding inside walls just to survive? Well, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. But one thing I've learned about the liberals is that they have no shame. Another liberal lie. All people who practice Islam are peaceful. I am sick and tired of it. I am sick and tired of hearing it. All people who practice any religion are not peaceful. So stop telling us that all people who practice this one religion are peaceful. Stop being so culturally sensitive and stop walking on eggshells with fear. They're getting over on you. The attack on the World Trade Center was not carried out in the name of a religion. It was carried out by psychologically damaged individuals who are murderers. How about this one? Leftists all love America, and they love the Constitution. That's why they protest. That's why they break windows. That's why they beat up police horses. That's why they throw bricks at police. That's to show their patriotic solidarity with the American flag. Well, let me tell you something. I don't believe in the rape of America in the name of saving America. And you're not going to get over on me. Okay? I know where you're coming from. I know what you want. Finally, we hear this capper. All liberals are really ethical. Really ethical. Let's show a picture of Bill Clinton. There's no better example of trickle-down immorality than Bill Clinton. He gave us 8 years of trickle-down immorality, and the acid has seeped into the homes of America. Now, ladies and gentlemen, he's the shining example. He is the figurehead of the left. He is the poster boy for liberalism. He is the only connection that I can see, by the way, between Clinton and ethical. The only connection I can see is that they both have 7 letters. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, when I come back, 1-888-MSNBC-USA or email me at michaelsavage.com. Be here or be nowhere.
Savage. Right-wing students making waves on liberal college campuses. Up next, Michael Savage talks with 2 of the most active radicals.
Einstein was a scientist who believed in God.
That's what I'm saying. I agree with you.
Okay.
They're God-fearing men. I'm a nurse. I work with doctors, scientists. That's ridiculous.
They're not all atheists, in other words. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. On campuses everywhere, by the way, there's an upsurge of conservative activism. And this is a far cry from when campus activism meant taking over the dean's office and smoking dope. Students are forming organizations now and publishing newspapers as they mount an assault on the liberal credos. And these young conservatives are not stuffy geeks. They're actually the cool ones on campus right now. Joining me now are two young people who are spearheading this movement, Charles Mitchell and Denise Chaikin, the president and former president of the Bucknell University Conservatives Club. Hello. Welcome to the Savage Nation. How did you guys get started on this road?
Go ahead. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Well, we just started the club last year, and we really hadn't had a conservatives club at Bucknell previously. So we just started the club and started publishing our paper, The Counterweight, and it just sort of went on from there.
Now, let me ask you something. I'm very interested. Is there a shift going on the campus, let's say to the center or to the right? Is it actually happening, or is it just you guys?
Go ahead.
Well, I think a lot of us feel like it's kind of been different since 9/11. It's not quite as fashionable as it used to be unpatriotic and to hate America. We've been having a lot of lecturers on campus like Dinesh D'Souza, Dan Flynn, David Horowitz talking about that subject, and it seems to go over well with students.
Now, wait a minute. How come you haven't had me on your campus? I'm the real leader of this spirit.
Do you do speaking?
Now, here's your test. Have you read The Savage Nation? This is your litmus test.
Sorry.
Yeah, not yet.
Oh, get him off my screen.
Can we have a free copy?
Yes, I will. We're going to send you 2 free copies.
Great, thanks.
I'm going to send you 2 free copies of the Bible. No, I'm going to send you a copy of The Savage Nation. We will. Get your... Now, give us some examples of the liberal brainwashing that you've seen on your campuses. Just a casual one.
Well, in classes, a lot of times, they just discuss liberal things as what's normal and the only view, whereas there's lots of sides to things, and we're not saying that we only want to hear the conservative perspectives or anything like that, but we just want to hear everything.
Yeah, like a little balance would be nice, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I want to tell you, kids, we're almost out of time. I am so proud of you for standing up to the mob. It's not easy. It's not easy. It isn't, because you're like, you know, you're still ostracized by the nutcases, right? Do they call you names?
They call us Nazis from time to time.
Yeah,
yes.
well, anyone who loves America, you know, hey, let me join that club, okay? You show an American flag, you know what that is to them? They think it's a Nazi flag. Shows you how crazy they are. You know why? They're red diaper doper babies. Too much marijuana. Thank you, guys. Thank you. These are two red, white, and, you guys are 2 red, white, and blue babies. Not red diaper doper babies.
Yeah.
At last, the moment you've been waiting for on the Savage Nation, this week's Hollywood idiot. They were such nice kids. They really were beautiful. You're probably thinking the Hollywood idiot this week is Sean Pencilhead. Now, for his $125,000 or creative writing project in the New York Times, people are all saying, my God, what was he thinking? Has anybody read this thing? It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe this. It's astounding. Where did he write this? Over how many weeks and years, and how many cars in Berkeley, and how many dinners and toilets? By the way, how many kids could have been fed in Iraq for the same amount of money he spent on this ad? Right? That's a lot of money. Now, between this and his Baghdad jaunt before the War of Liberation, Penn could have been a shoo-in for this Hollywood Idiot Award. But Sean is too easy a target. So I'm going to leave him for someone else to make fun of. I have nothing against the guy. I just think he's wrong. I told you at the start of this show that my Hollywood idiot was a she this week. This particular she is no stranger to tabloid headlines about sex or drugs or domestic disputes. But this time, she's on a foreign quest to the Holy Land to visit an African-American community called the Black Hebrews. They believe they are descended from a lost tribe of Israelites. They refuse to eat meat, dairy, and sugar. No word on what they think of marijuana and other substances, both of which this diva may have dabbled in. This group bans contraception and believes in polygamy, and they're not in Utah. And they refer to each other as saints. I guess that means that I have to refer to the winner of this week's Hollywood Idiot Award as Saint Whitney Houston. Shalom, Saint Whitney. I bet your husband, Bobby Brown, can't wait to check out the polygamy part of the religious equations, okay? Thanks for joining me on the Savage Nation. My train's leaving the station, and I'll see you next week right here. And as I tell you every week, with God's will and your listenership, I shall return. Be here or be nowhere. I'm not an ordinary talk show host. I'm not a guy who was a disc jockey who got lucky. Let's make this